Hello, welcome to Pastor Wale Speaks on Family Life, and today I want to talk about a subject which I've entitled Minding the Gap. Minding the Gap. You know, in many, if you're a frequent train traveler, you will find that as you're approaching a station, the conductor will go over the address system and say, mind the gap at the next station, because often there's a gap between the train and the platform, and sometimes people want to step into the gap, and if you do that, you could be endangering your life. So today I'm talking about some of the gaps that you will find in the marital home, some of the gaps that we don't want to step into. So this session is devoted to talking about the gaps that couples can fall into that can endanger their marriages. Okay, I say a big welcome to Charles Adefope, you're welcome. To Chukuma Okeke, you're welcome. To Bangboy Kenny, you're welcome. Nice to have you joining us today for this session. Well, what are the gaps? What are the gaps that you want to mind? The gaps you don't want to step into, otherwise you could be endangering your marriage. Some of these things may sound very trivial, but they're not. They're quite important. Gap number one, it's very easy to make assumptions about how your partner thinks or how your partner feels about a particular issue. Many times, our assumptions are wrong. Okay? So it's very easy, you have a situation and you just assume that this is what your partner must think about the situation. Not always the case. You could be wrong. So instead of making an assumption, why don't you just ask your partner, what do you feel? What do you think about this matter? Okay. And conversely, it's often likely for us to assume that our partners know how we feel about something. They could be, we could be totally wrong, and they've got it missed. They've missed us. So why don't you just tell them? Just tell them how you feel about a particular matter. Chris Monu, you're welcome. Michael Ehizwa Asilime, you're welcome. Denrele Ogeimbo, you're welcome. And David Okusunugu, Pastor David Okusunugu, you're welcome. Jotu, you're welcome. On this matter where I'm talking about minding the gap. The gaps that we don't want to step into. Otherwise we could put our marriage into some kind of situation. So constant assumptions gradually erode the confidence that couples have in one another. So mind this gap. Don't fall into the gap of making assumptions about what your partner thinks or feels about a situation. Tell them or ask them. Okay? Now the second gap, and these are really very simple things, but they can be very damaging to a marriage. Ibironke Buraima, you're welcome. Rebuking your spouse in the presence of company. Rebuking your spouse in the presence of company, whether it is from the husband to the wife or from the wife to the husband. Rebuking your spouse in the presence of company will build up resentment. That is an inevitable result. It will build up resentment, and it is absolutely unnecessary. All you need to do is wait. It's totally uncalled for. Don't correct them. Don't rebuke them in the presence of company. All you need to do is wait till you're alone together, and then explain. By that time, you might not be as hot as you were when the offense, if it was an offense, came. So don't rebuke your spouse in public. Whatever your spouse does that upsets or offends you can wait. It can wait. Sit on it. It can wait till you are alone together. Okay. Nelson Obi, welcome. Juliet Morganeke, you're welcome. Now, another gap is presenting a united front, especially to your children. Children can sense when parents are not at one over a matter, and they are masters at exploiting any differences. So present a united front. And you cannot present a united front until you have sat down, talked about the situation, agreed together. You know, I know what children can do. Simple things, like, can I buy ice cream? If mommy says no, they go to daddy. If daddy doesn't know that mommy has said no, if they don't have a common policy about it, then daddy might say yes, and then mommy gets upset. Flora, or Dr. Alex, DJ Alex, you're welcome, DJ Alex. Flora Omorui, you're welcome. Jackson Ekugum, Jackson Lifeway. I haven't seen Lifeway in a while. Abiola Famiyesen, you're welcome. We're talking about minding the gap. What are the gaps that often arise in married life? So I've talked about a few things so far. I've talked about making assumptions about what each other thinks or feels. Sometimes you make an assumption, you do it in all honesty, in all sincerity, but you're wrong. So it's so much simpler to just ask, how do you feel about this? Or when the assumption is the other way around, tell them, this is how I feel about this matter. So no assumptions. Rebuking your spouse in the presence of company will build up resentment. Save it. Save it till you're alone together, and then you can talk. Kofo Kego, you're welcome to Pastor Wale Speaks on today, minding the gap. So rebuking your spouse in the presence of company, and especially in the presence of the children, just don't do it. That's a no. Wait until you are alone together. Okay. Another gap is resolving differences. How do you resolve differences? As much as possible, differences should be settled in private between the couple. It is only when a problem cannot be resolved by the couple that they should seek help. So no going to friends, no reporting to relations. Between the two of you, sit down. And if you really want to mind this gap, then pick a time when both are relatively at ease, are not tense, and are not likely to make it difficult for you to talk about the matter. So differences should, as much as possible, be settled between the parties. As much as possible, seek help from third parties such as pastors or professional counselors, but avoid involving members of your extended family in your marital problems. It is difficult for extended family members to be impartial, and they're likely to remember the issues long after you've both forgotten them and overcome them. Samuel Moshokwe Folua, you're welcome. Princess Adasa Obahi, you're welcome. Stanley, Undiluted Praise, Arinze, you're welcome. I'm talking about the gaps, minding the gaps that can come up in the place of marriage. Now, another gap is total openness in financial matters, where, again, assumptions are possible here, where a wife assumes that her husband can afford it, okay? And because he's not open, she doesn't know what he's earning, what he's earned, what is available to him, what are the challenges that are facing him because he's not been open. She makes the assumption, he resents it because he feels that she really is stretching him beyond his limit, and that's tough. Brian, Gideon Ekanam, you're welcome. Brian Ayeni, you're welcome. Victor James, Abbasiak and Ekim, you're welcome. Kofo Joel, you're welcome. So total openness when it comes to financial matters. This can help prevent major problems from developing. Okay, financial prudence thrives when all the cards are laid down on the table. It's a big gap that you mustn't fall into. Okay? When you're open about your finances, it also engenders trust in one another. Okay? Plan your budgets together. You should both have inputs and then support each other in keeping your budget. I find in a marriage that one person is generally better at handling funds than the other, and it'll help if you agree who the better person is to handle funds. I mean, with some people you put money into their hands and it's gone before you know it. Before they know it, it's gone. So here's the opportunity. Pick. It could be the wife, it could be the husband, who's more reliable at handling funds when they come in. Okay. So total openness. Budget. A budget is really very simply a financial plan. And it is said that if you fail to plan, you are actually planning to fail. So if you don't have a budget, let me use a simple illustration. If you go shopping, maybe your weekly or your monthly shop, you go shopping and you don't have a list, then you will come back from the shops with far more than you intended to buy. Because the list constrains you, okay? You've set up the things that you actually need, and when you get to the shops, you buy them and you leave, okay? So planning of budgets is a job that should be taken together. Finance is one of the major causes of disruption in marriages, and it really needn't be. If couples are open with each other with their money issues, they save themselves much pain. I know that somebody is going to ask, well, what if the wife has more income than her husband? How do they handle their finances in those circumstances? And I want to say that very simply, that I think it's a very simple answer. You're married now. The two of you have become one, and therefore your resources should be joint. I mean, if you couldn't trust each other with each other's resources, then why did you get married? You're married, pool your resources. At least pool the resources that you need for your common welfare, for your common wealth as a family. So that's to me is really very straightforward and very simple. Ishola Shade, you're welcome. Martins Olushakin, you're welcome. Great to have you join us on this episode, or webisode, or whatever they call it. Somebody recently told me that his best friend was a female, and he found it much easier to confide in her even after he had become married. That's a gap that you will fall into. I think after a couple marry, that they should be able to have friends in common. Okay? If you had a friend, you shouldn't hide the friend or hide the relationship with your friend from your spouse. Okay? You should both be able to, levels of friendship will be different, but you should both be able to have a friendship with your friend. Okay? And if it's a person of the opposite sex, then you really have to restrict. The friendship has to change. You cannot discuss intimate things, the things that are intimate between yourself and your wife, with this person because they're your best friend. So that requires a lot of wisdom. And if you're not careful, you're going to bring difficulties. Let me say, finally, I don't see anything wrong with maintaining friendships with members of the opposite sex if you're married, but there's nothing to hide. If there's nothing to hide, then you'll be able to bring your spouse into the relationship. Okay, so that's another gap. Upon getting married, relationships with most of the people around you will have to change, especially with family and close friends. I think you just have to be able to send a signal to the people that have been very close to you in the past, sometimes best friends, that the boundaries have changed. There are new lines, and these lines are not meant to be crossed over. It must be obvious to everyone, including your parents, siblings, etc., that your spouse now takes precedence over everyone else in your life. The two of you have become one. Your spouse must take precedence over everybody else in your life. I think it's also good, it avoids falling into a gap, if the two of you can develop a policy together on how to deal with friends and relations, so that you are both, even if you're not together at the time of an incident, you both know exactly what to do. And finally, and this is a short session today, finally, the family that prays together stays together. And so it's important that families take time, as families, not as individuals, husband having his own prayer time, wife. No, there ought to be a time when the whole family comes together and prays together. And this will build the family in ways that you cannot imagine, because this is a spiritual thing that you're doing. I'm very happy to hear from you. I'd like your feedback. Please, you can also send email to info@waleadefarasin.org. I'll be happy to receive them. Joseph Anurukem, you're just joining us, you're welcome. Anthony May Rebele, you're welcome. Nice to have you with us today. So today is a short session. I talked about minding the gap. It's been a pleasure to have brought this episode to you. I'll be back again on Thursday evening at 4 p.m. with another episode where I'll be talking about something else, talking about family life. So until Thursday, please stay blessed. Mind how you go. God bless you.